All right, guys, welcome back to Hill Report, presented by TarHeal247.com. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones and AJ. Hallelujah. Rejoice. We are one step closer to not having to talk about the net in December. And that's a fantastic Friday night, if you ask me, man. That's what I know Carolina fans are ecstatic tonight about the performance, and that's what we're going to talk about because it was a fantastic night for the Tar Heels. But that's kind of the first thing that popped in my mind, man. And this is a big step towards avoiding that net conversation in December.
Well, I talked to Seth about that, and Seth knew it. He was one of the few players that would openly talk about it last year. Yeah. He was clued into it. I was like, you got one in your back pocket now, man. It's going to be there all year. Yeah. This is a good enough Kansas team. They're going to be in the top 30 on Selection Sunday. This will be a quad one win. And Seth's like, yeah, we got Michigan State coming up in a few weeks. He knows you got to pluck off some of those things, and then it becomes important for where your seating is down the road. Mm-hmm. And by the way, they are breaking the arena down, a bunch of stuff down, so there is some noise. We apologize for that, but if you've been with us before, there's no other place to go do this, so I'm doing it here, and we'll buzz through this fairly quickly, depending on the noise. But, they got their quad one win tonight, and it was a very impressive quad one win. And the head coach didn't even brush aside questions about it yesterday, which tells me he understands how important this is. We're going to do a separate podcast, hopefully tonight, depending on the conditions in here. If not, we'll do it Sunday morning, about Hubert understanding how important this was for a lot of reasons, and somebody reached out to help him with this. That'll be really cool. It's and by the way, man, this was Carolina basketball dignitaries. I'm just walking from the press room to do player interviews. Got Phil Ford. Hey, what's up, Phil? Tyler Hansbrough, Marcelo, Marcus Ginyard. They're all over the place. Shammond Williams was in there. And, Shammond was here when I first started doing this for a living. He was my first favorite player to cover because loved the way he played, loved his work ethic and all that stuff. So this was a big-time Carolina basketball night, Jacob. And I wish you would have been here for it because it was oozing with the history of this program. And they served that history well.
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic, man. AJ, I'm going to mute you for a second just while I run through some of these stats real quick, and then we're going to dive into the meat of this thing just so we can avoid a little bit of that background noise back there. Again, bear with us, guys. We appreciate it. Real quickly, too, before we dive into it, 75% off promo going on in TarHeal247.com. It comes out to just over $2 a month for the first year. VIP premium membership, 75% off right now for 1 year. I'm going to put the link in the description to the sign-up box. Head on over there. Super easy if you don't have an account. It's like a few clicks of a button. Put in your information and you're good to go. Great time to do so. Football's still going on. The overlap's in full swing. Basketball with a massive win over Kansas, obviously, which we're going to dive into here in a second. Take advantage of that promo, guys. It's a absolutely awesome one. And it ends on, is it Monday night, AJ? Is that when it ends?
Monday night at midnight. And by the way, they're playing Stairway to Heaven in here. Hopefully y'all can't hear it because it'll just make things more difficult to hear me because of all the noise.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely
have there's TV guys doing stand-up in here, so hopefully they'll turn it down.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to mute you while I talk just to avoid some of that. So I'm going to mute you real quick, AJ, and sorry for everybody listening out. They're like, you don't have to tell us. It's a little communication, so he doesn't start talking when he's muted over there. But as we've talked about, Carolina getting an 87-74 victory over the Jayhawks, first win over Kansas since 2002. I'm going to run through some stats real quick. Caleb Wilson, we're going to talk about him in this show for sure. Game high 24 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. When you talk about a guy coming in as a true freshman and absolutely hit the ground running, I think Caleb Wilson's been just the absolute definition of that. Henry Vasar, 20 points, big-time performance from him down low, and what was a dominant night in the paint for the Tar Heels, 48-20 advantage in the paint. You also had Seth Trimble, 17 points, 8 boards, and Kion Evans, 12 points, all of which came in the second half. But AJ, we're not going to talk about the second half right now. We've got to talk about that first half. And I think the best way to describe it was just sloppy. Carolina had 10 turnovers, 3 for 15 from 3. That's 20% going in to the halftime break. And I think you even break it down even more. You look at the combo of Luka, Kion Evans, and Jaron Stevenson combined to score just 0 points in the first half. They were 0 for 10 from the floor. Carolina went into the break behind 8. And I guess all things considered, when you considered how Carolina played in the first half, especially compared to what they were able to do in the second half, being behind by 8 wasn't the worst scenario Carolina could have been in. And again, we're going to talk about the second half because that was really when the game was won and Carolina really stomped its authority. But I think in the moment, AJ, you're watching it, and I tweeted at halftime, and I said that was a little bit of a disappointing half. I had a little bit more expectations for this team coming into that game. But I think looking back on it now, with how the second half worked out, I don't know if you want to sit here and say you're glad about how the first half went, but the bounce back ability that Carolina showed to deal with adversity after a poor first half showing against a good team, I think is a massive positive this team's going to take away from tonight. But what did you make of that first half? And for someone who was in the building, AJ, was it Carolina coming in a little bit too overhyped? Was the sloppiness, like what did you put that sloppiness down to?
If you don't move offensively, you're not going to get good looks. So that was the biggest thing. Their movement was terrible. Their spacing was terrible. It was not basketball 101. And I was talking with Jaron Stevenson after the game about it. I said, he was outlining because people kept asking what was the difference. And he's outlining a bunch of stuff. I said, Jaron, it's just a matter of being simple. It's a hard sport, but it's an easy sport. Like the approach is pretty simple. You move without the ball. You pass and cut. You be aware of teammates. You make shots, and you go inside to open up the outside. So they did that in the second half. Didn't do it the first half. They had a lot of ugly shots, forced shots that probably shouldn't have been taken because the spacing was bad. There was no movement. There was a lot of standing around and watching, and it led to a lot of turnovers. Kansas had 17 points off 10 turnovers, Carolina turnovers in the first half. In addition, Carolina had 10 offensive rebounds in the first half and only 2 second-chance points. So if you look at special teams in basketball, we talk about it in football, but it's there in basketball big time. That is a 17-2 difference right there in which the game should have been like, shame on Kansas for not locking the game away at that point. They probably would have done that to a lot of teams, to most teams around the country, but the Tar Heels were within 8. They were within 8 because Caleb Wilson and Henry Vesar. They did enough stuff to keep the team afloat. I think Henry had 2 of their 3, all 3 threes in the first half were by bigs. Zayden High got one off a feed from Henry. Henry got one off a feed. I think it was from Zayden at one point. And we've talked about Zayden's passing. I know people are dogging him some, but he's connected on a made three-pointer in each of the last 3 games, including the exhibition game. So they were bad in the first half. They looked overmatched in the backcourt. Kyan Evans looked like a Mountain West player in the first half. He looked like an ACC player in the second half. I thought Seth did a lot of nice stuff with Darren Peterson, but you've got to help on a guy like Peterson. He's a pro. Peterson was scoring like a 30-year-old NBA player tonight. Some of the stuff he was doing where you would get the body in and you would get the clean look. And I thought Seth did a really nice job on him. Bill Self said afterward he thought Seth did a really nice job on him, thought that was a difference because Peterson, I think, attempted 14 shots. Self said, look, we needed him to attempt 22 or 23 to have a chance to win, and credit Seth Trimble for not letting him get all those shots off to score enough to win the game by him getting the ball so much. So I think that in the first half, it looked like last year. It was ugly basketball. It was like, guys, we've seen this before. I guess it doesn't matter who the bodies are. They're sort of doing the same thing. And I think that the people who are critical of Hubert, some of the people who think that this is a litmus test on Hubert in the first half were saying, well, guys, we've seen enough because nothing looks different. The bodies are totally different. The skill sets are totally different. And it looked a lot like the ugly from last year, the ugly from a couple of years ago. But I'm going to disagree and say it's okay having the ugly stuff if you win the game because you can learn a lot from it. They saw in the second half what 20 minutes of playing basketball offensively the right way does for a team like this because they got a lot of people who could put the ball in the basket. They got a lot of people who could pass it. We've been closely following and doing pods and articles about all the different guys that get assists on this team. This isn't one of those games where they get 14 and 3 guys have assists. Maybe someone gets a 1 because someone cuts and he hits and he scores. You're going to have 7, 8 guys. Whoever plays is going to get assists. That's the kind of team this is, and we saw them do it afterward. But they weren't.
That's a first. That is a first on this show. I can tell you that for free. I've never seen an actual seat drop behind you.
That's what they were playing like offensively in the first half. Right there.
Oh my
That
God.
was it. I mean, they stunk at times.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
and yet they were only down 8 because they out rebounded Kansas by, I don't know, 10 in the first half, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They had a huge offensive glass, even though they weren't scoring points off of their offensive rebounds, something they need to do better. But they were still getting them. So the effort was there. They just weren't playing smart, weren't playing fluidly, weren't playing with the necessary skip in their step offensively that they need to be a good team that we saw in the second half, which is, I know, where you want to transition with all of this crashing and banging going on.
Yeah. We're doing our best over here. It does sound like somebody's trying to shoot you with like a shotgun every once in a while. Yeah, I definitely will.
The bombs are dropping.
And on that note, I'm going to mute you, AJ. Yeah, the second half's what I want to talk about because, as I mentioned earlier, and it's not rocket science if you watch the game, that's when the game completely flipped on its head. And you mentioned it a second ago, and I think defense played a massive factor in what went down in the second half and kind of led to an improved performance from the Tar Heels, a much improved performance from the Tar Heels, because as we talk about the first half, was characterized a lot by sloppiness. You look at the amount of turnovers Carolina had. You look at the fact that they just could not buy a basket, especially from behind the basket, from behind the 3-point line. And that flipped on its head. Carolina started taking care of the basketball, just one turnover in the second half. They started hitting shots. If you kind of break it down, Carolina averaged just under a point per possession in the first half, AJ, 1.7 in the second. I mean, it's almost double the amount that they were scoring, which, again, played a massive factor in Carolina being able to pull away. But I think the fact that they bowed up defensively kind of got them going a little bit, got the crowd going a little bit. And once Carolina kind of went on that run, I believe it was 29-9 starting from around the 2-minute mark in the first half. So that run carried over the second half. I know Carolina was on at least a 10-0 run to start the second half at one point. And that just was kind of set the tone for what this half was going to be. Ended up outscoring Kansas 58-37 in the final 20 minutes. And obviously a big factor of that was the improved outside shooting, was the improved defense. But, man, when you look at that stat sheet that we've talked about a little bit, 39-27 advantage in rebounds, 48-20 advantage in points in the paint. That, to me, looks like a vintage North Carolina basketball box score right there that we did not see a lot at times last year. And that's where Carolina's made its bread and butter in the past. So, again, from someone who was in the building, AJ, I know from my perspective, watching it at home, felt like, again, Carolina started taking care of the ball, started hitting some shots to start the second half, and it started on the defensive end. But someone who was in the building, like, what changed energy-wise for the Tar Heels? Because I joked at halftime on Twitter and on the boards, I'm like, man, like, someone needs to release that halftime speech footage ASAP, because whatever Hubert said to him worked, because Carolina was just a completely different team in a lot of ways in the final 20 minutes.
Have you ever played darts? You ever played English darts?
Yeah.
You know, the 20s, 19s, 18s, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, when you're popping and you hit a triple 19, feel pretty good, right?
Yeah, you feel pretty nice.
You ever play bocce ball, like on the beach?
Oh, yeah, I love some
You
bocce
knock someone else's ball out and you're feeling pretty good.
Yeah, get a little confidence, yeah.
When you do positive things and see results, everything else comes together. Everything mushrooms out of that. And we saw that. I think one of the underlying keys in this game was that Bryson Tiller had 12 points in the first half, hit 4 for 4 from three. He's a 6'10", 6'11" kid. He created some matchup issues for Carolina, drew some fouls, and Peterson drew a lot of fouls too. And then the second half, Carolina went right at him, got him in foul trouble. Self took him out with 4, puts him back in. Like 80 seconds later, picks up his 5th foul. And he was gone at the midpoint of the second half. They didn't have him to go to anymore. I thought that they did a nice job limiting what Flory could do. And honestly, they did a good job not letting Peterson take over the game. And Seth gets that credit. They didn't switch nearly as much tonight as they usually do defensively. And I think that's the way to play. I know that there are certain types of teams where you maybe want to switch a little bit more, but they didn't tonight. And when you've got defenders like, we talked about this in the show the other day, Jacob, when you have defenders on the wings like Seth Trimble and Jaron Stevenson, you don't need to switch. You know what I mean? You don't really need to that much. Seth was getting over screens. Reminded me of Roy's favorite defender ever. The best player he ever coached getting over screens was Wes Miller. Yep. And Roy used to talk about it all the time, about that tough little nut getting over screens. And he was a lot shorter, so it was maybe easier for him to weasel over there, right? Not Seth. I mean, Seth was getting hips and stuff like that. There were some fouls that were not called. He kept right at it. And I think that Seth's energy, Seth's intensity, his laser focus kind of mushroomed out to the rest of the team, and they played the game the right way. The spacing was fantastic in the second half, stunk at times in the first half. They moved the ball, the awareness with everybody. Henry and Caleb, that high-low, we've talked about the high-low for 6 weeks, about how that was going to be a part of this team. David did a film review about it just a week ago, and we saw it. They're feeding off each other. I mean, these are 6'10", 6'7" foot guys who could both shoot from the perimeter. They can both get to the basket. Caleb's better driving, obviously, than Henry, but they're both extremely willing passers. They see the floor well. They anticipate cuts well as passers, and they can complete the pass. I had someone in the program tell me in September, Henry could lead this team in assists. I'm like, really? But we're seeing that. And with the way they play, more positionless, because I don't know how great they are at point guard and how traditional I don't think they're very traditional point guard. You need to have a lot of guys that can complete passes when cuts are made and guys are open. You have to give them the ball in position when they could do something with it. And that happened routinely in the second half. It was beautiful basketball. In the first half, they looked like last year. I've covered a whole lot of Final Four teams in my life. In the second half, they look like a Final Four team. That's not saying they are. That's just the level that they performed in the second half. They completely kicked Kansas's rear end in the second half. That doesn't happen very often. You don't see this from Bill Self very often. He's as good a coach as there is in college basketball. He's proven it over time. He's able to do stuff at Kansas that Roy wasn't able to do, which, maybe Roy would have had he stayed there. But he is a legend at Kansas. He's a legend at a favorable program for a reason, and he had no answers. He couldn't turn to the bench and put somebody in that would change the game because Carolina owned the game. They owned every inch of this floor in the second half. They had a lot of success doing basic stuff, playing just 101 basketball, and they were damn good at it. And another factor I want to throw in there, too, about Caleb Wilson.
Yeah.
This club can feed off a freshman, and they're really willing and okay feeding off a freshman. This guy is climbing into that very small group of best freshmen ever at North Carolina, and it's November 7th. And this is not hyperbole. If you've seen him, it's there. And he told me after the game, I'd reminded him about Salt Lake City. When I asked him outside the locker room about the game, he said, man, that's the most fun I ever had playing basketball. I said, how about tonight? And he went off about how much more fun it was and how incredible it was. And I guess in the dialogue, something was in there about just his intent on just killing the ball, like when he dunks. Like he wants to hit the pop when it hits the floor. And there was his last dunk. He mentioned somebody's last dunk. I said, you knew where the camera was. He got right in the camera and did all that. And he's got all those bells and whistles to his game. He said that before the game, that he takes a little bit of Michael Jordan here, where you find something in the building that pisses you off and you try to kill it for the next 40 minutes, right? He said that he didn't like the way Kansas was going through warm-ups. So they were kind of nonchalantly in the layup drill, and he took it personally. He was offended by it.
Yeah,
so his mission was to squash that for the next 40 minutes. He did. He is a great freshman.
Yeah, I've never seen a true freshman that I can think of in my lifetime, genuinely. And there's been some good true freshmen here. Don't get me wrong. There's been Kobe White's, the Cole Anthony's, the Harrison Barnes's, Tyler Hansborough's, freshmen.
Well, Tyler was the best.
Yeah, no doubt. But what Caleb has done, I don't think I've ever seen a guy that I remember that has hit the ground running like Caleb Wilson has. AJ, Tyler did too.
Tyler
agree.
did, but Tyler was a different player.
Yeah, and AJ, that was 20 years ago. You know what I mean? At this point. And what Caleb Wilson's done is he's been good since the first minute of the freaking BYU game. Like, there hasn't been this bedding in period. He's been the best player all season.
Here's what's so different and unique about him is that, there's stereotypes when we use descriptions to say, oh, this guy's cagey. Well, you think, well, he's not very athletic, but he finds ways to do things, right? This guy's gritty. Again, kind of big and burly, burrows his way into stuff. Like Tyler was gritty, right? Caleb is supremely talented, supremely skilled, supremely driven, supremely connected, supremely gritty, and supremely cagey. He's all that. He's every description you can make of a basketball player in one. Diving after the loose balls. That one sequence where I think it was he and Henry dove after a loose ball, got it freed up. He's a great freshman basketball player. First 4 buckets the other night were dunks. First two tonight were dunks. I mean, he's a guy that makes a statement right away in a game, makes his presence felt. You cannot not know where he is, and he's still able to beat you. There's some guys like Jaren Stevenson's a very stealth player, and I mean that as a compliment. He does a lot of little things to help them win, and the eyeballs are not on him. And because of a lot of little things he does, allows Henry and Caleb and those guys to do the things they do. But Caleb is like the whole world knows he's going to get the ball. The whole world knows he's going to do something with the ball. And you know what? He's going to stop it. He's going to stop a drive, shoot an 18-foot turnaround jump shot, swish. He's going to go to the lane, draw a foul, go to the free throw line. It was his 2 free throws that put them ahead at 44-43 instead. And he's just has a knack for doing whatever needs to be done. He tried his best in the first half, he and Henry, and the other guys didn't really cooperate, but they cooperated in the second half, and you saw how outstanding this team can be.
Yeah, and I think that's what we'll wrap it up with what this means. We'll try to get out of here before too long because of the background noise. Got a little bit better, so appreciate everybody that stuck around with us.
I'm gonna came by and said he was going to wait till we finished.
We appreciate that because the video would have been over.
He's a good guy. He works with us. So there's some TV in here too, so that helps.
I would have walked off if they started slamming those behind. I'd be like, yeah, I'm done. But yeah, in terms of what this means, I'm gonna mute you one more time. It's just probably the last time tonight. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit there. I think it reaffirms something that we talked about before the season started. We talked about it earlier this week about it, and you and David talked about it before the season started. Okay, when you look at the pieces on this team, there's a lot to like about this roster. There's a lot of talent on this roster. You have high-end talent with Caleb Wilson. You got a guy like Henry Vasar who's very intriguing. Saw his best performance tonight. You've got Luka, who we haven't talked about him tonight. He had a pretty quiet game. Hasn't even really got settled in yet. And this team is still going out and beating Kansas by 13. You've seen Seth Trimble kind of doing what he's been doing this year. We knew the importance of him. But I think what this game reaffirms, as we've talked about, is, okay, yeah, like this team, there's actually some tangible evidence now out there to say, yeah, like this team actually can be pretty dang good. And this team, we saw a little bit, I think, in the second half of what this team's high-end potential can be. But AJ, I think the most positive thing from tonight is we are 2 games in, guys. I know there was 2 exhibition games before the season, and I know things can change in a season, and there's you go through different kind of ups and downs during a season. Most teams do, but the fact that Carolina was able to secure this win, was able to take one step closer to us not having to talk about the net in December, which is just, played kind of the Hubert Davis era a lot in his tenure so far. These are all positives. And this is a team this might even be the most positive. You think about it. This is a team that's playing its 4th game together. If you're counting the exhibition games, this is a game that Luka played his 2nd game in college. And again, was kind of a non-factor tonight in some ways. And Carolina still beat the number 19 ranked team in the country. These are all positives. You're walking away from this game saying, okay, a lot to like about what we saw tonight from North Carolina. Obviously, a lot of games left to go, but I can definitely say that every fan walking out of the Dean Smith Center about an hour and a half ago was feeling pretty dang good about what they saw tonight. And that's what you want, AJ. Like it's fun to watch games like that. It's fun to cover games like that. That is the Carolina basketball that we've seen so many times in the past. So just a massive positive for North Carolina tonight. And yeah, it's going to leave that good, taste feeling in your mouth when you go watch the football team tomorrow if you're a Carolina basketball fan.
When you are a fabled program and have the passionate, the deep blood flow that this fan base has for this program, what they just did tonight is they raised the bar on the rest of the season.
And AJ, this fan base knows what good basketball looks like.
This fan base deserved the second half tonight, man.
Yeah, 100%.
They deserved it. It's just everything lately, right? Mm-hmm. And just the basketball just hasn't popped enough the way it needs to pop.
Like that.
And like that. And
we're close, guys. We're at the finish line. We're getting close.
This fan base knows what it's looking at. They appreciate a lot of really good stuff, and they enjoy the theatrics. And this is a dunking team. It was a dunk fest again tonight against Kansas. I don't know how many dunks left. I'm going to go back and look at some point whenever we can pump the brakes. I think we actually have a couple of days where I don't have to come to Chapel Hill, and maybe I'm going to go back and look at how many times they dunked last year. Mm-hmm. And they're just dunking like crazy. And yeah, dunks are dunks. They can be overrated. But this team, when it dunks, it's a little bit more theatrical. It's a little more emphatic. it's a little bit more of a screw you with each dunk. It's not just a dunk. It means that they just ate you alive on that possession, because a lot of times they're dunking because someone on the perimeter, often a very tall person, is passing the ball in to another very tall person. And they would have more dunks if Seth Trimble would just go in and flush.
Oh, no, man.
Seth's a great guy. I really enjoy covering him. I hope he has an incredible season and plays in the league, right?
You're so
gotta flush.
AJ, he's so lethal in the lane when he goes up strong. Like there's not a lot of defenders can't guard that with how athletic he is.
Flush.
I know. He's got to go up strong.
He's got to go borrow that stuffed bear that JP had, that stuffed bear Jerry 15 years ago that JP took with him for a while on road trips and stuff. If you remember back then, it was pretty wild. If JP or Seth are watching this, they'll probably start laughing. But JP took that like in half the road trips, half the season, and he's tomahawk dunking in traffic on people. Go look at his dunk at Duke that year. Mm-hmm. Seth needs to channel some of that, and they'd have even more dunks. They've raised the bar. Now we've seen them look really good. I thought that they did a lot of really good things against BYU. Mm-hmm. They didn't win the game, but I thought that they learned a ton that helped them tonight. But you don't do what they did to Kansas in the second half without showing the world, okay, we need to be closer to this more often than not. But human nature tells us they're not always going to be that way. But that needs to be the challenge. So now they got games coming up against teams they should handle with ease, but the challenge should be, there's the bar. There's the standard. So be that against Navy, against Radford, against East Tennessee State, USC Upstate, whoever it is. And then when you face St. Bonaventure in a few weeks in Fort Myers, Florida, I'll be there. Then you do the same thing with them, and then you're ready for Michigan State. I told you before, and I'm not saying this is a championship team, but 2005 team, that December in 2004, they had 7 straight games they should have walked over me. And I said, you know what? I'm going to judge them on these 7. Where is their focus level? Where is their intent to squash? What is their collective intent to squash? They beat the crap out of those teams. They did what they didn't sleepwalk. This team has an opportunity to show us that those high-end stretches of dunk fest and squashing and foot-on-throat basketball, they need to show that in these next couple of weeks before they go to Fort Myers, because after that, they got to go to Kentucky. Then they come play Georgetown, which beat Maryland tonight. Yep. And then they got to play Ohio State later on in December. And you talk about putting that one win in your back pocket. They could put 4 or 5 of them in their back pocket before league play starts. And then we're talking about a whole different conversation about quads. Now, again, it's November 7th. We don't want to get too far into it. Kansas looked pretty good beating Carolina last year, and Kansas ended up having a mediocre team.
Yep.
So that could be maybe Kansas is mediocre right now. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But Carolina looked really damn good tonight. They've got to be this moving forward. This has to be the bar.
Yeah, this is the bar moving forward. You're absolutely right, AJ.
Mute me now.
I'm definitely muting you. We are heading out of here too, guys. We made it out of here in under 30 minutes. Give yourself a round of applause if you made it this far in the show. We appreciate it. For those who don't know, I'm just provide a little context real quick, AJ. I'll compare it to like the Spectrum Center, and I'm not saying there's a lot of great spots to go in the Spectrum Center either. But the thing about the Smith Center is there is not a lot of like rooms in the media where the media has access to that you can just walk in. There's not just a lot of rooms that exist in the first place in the bowels of the Smith Center, really. So the only place to really do a show is on the court or in the concourse, and it doesn't matter where you are. It's going to be loud. So we appreciate everybody that stuck with us here.
I did the Players Lounge a few times last year, and I don't think they liked it, so it's locked now.
AJ's been officially kicked out.
I tugged on the door 40 minutes ago, and it was locked.
God, that's tough. That was a good spot.
Well, we should get out of here because they're definitely folding the stands.
Yeah, we're going to make it work. We're going to do a separate pod at some point. Heck, AJ, we might even do it after the football game tomorrow because at least it was quiet after that. Maybe we do a separate basketball pod after the football game or something.
Honestly, guys, I got like 12 basketball pods I want to do.
Yeah, there's so much.
And stories. Noah's writing stuff right now. I got to go in there and write my column and finish my takeaways. And then tomorrow I'll be back here in not too long for football. And who knows what will happen there. We may have a ton of stuff out of that as well. So we're going to be rolling. There are so many storylines this basketball team. There are so many nuances to this team. We're going to be rolling out pods, a lot of short pods coming up too. And by the way, hello to my friends from Pennsylvania that drove down from the Allentown area. They left at like 3 o'clock this morning to come down here. They come down. They were here for the JMU football game last year. And they were here for the Richmond football game. These guys are diehards. So drop us a note. Let us know you're there, and we can communicate. Maybe next time you come back down for a game, I'll make sure I go find you guys. We get a fist bump, and if Jacob's covering the game, he can too.
Yeah,
a lot of people enjoying our stuff. They've really quieted down here for a minute. I spent half of warm-ups talking to people, calling out, "Hey, AJ, come on over here," and that's great because the fans are excited. They appreciate what we're doing, but more than that, they're here and they're just excited. If they're going to want to talk to you, that means they're just happy about being here. They're happy about the potential, what they can see. I imagine they're going to talk a lot more because what they saw in the second half tonight, Jacob, I've seen that before, and I've seen it on teams that hang laundry up here. Lots of different kinds of laundry, not just the
big one. Yeah, not just the big one.
Not just that stuff. But this club has the potential to, compete for some pretty tangible things, and it's going to be a long season, but it's going to be very fun and interesting chronicling what this team does, and I will be at every game.
Yeah, we'll be everywhere, man. We'll be doing this. People know we've been sticking with us for years, man. You know where to find us on these post-game podcasts, and like AJ said, we got plenty of stuff we're going to be pumping out.
We got to go because I told him 2 minutes, like 8 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say it got quiet for a second, but I was like, AJ, it's the calm before the storm. So I'm going to mute you for the last time tonight. We're going to get out of here. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Another edition of our Three Things post-game podcast. Like the video below, man. Really good performance, North Carolina. I know Carolina fans watching this are feeling good right now. If you made it this far, like the video below if you enjoyed it. Like the video below if you like what you saw from the Tar Heels tonight. Like, share, subscribe, notification bell too. See y'all next time. Thanks.